Good morning and welcome. My name is Elise Stewart and I am a Community Outreach Manager for the Department of Motor Vehicles in their Technology Division. I'm going to talk to you today about cell phone technology, and I'm calling it friend or foe, and I hope today that you'll be able to understand exactly what I mean by that. So a little bit of history about cell phones. In 1973, Martin Cooper, who you can see on this slide, was the first man to talk on a cell. He was the then executive at Motorola and made the first ever cellular phone call on the streets of New York to then executive at Bell Labs and AT&T, which was their direct competition. Thus, the humble beginnings of cell phones. The first cell phone weighed just under 2.5 pounds. And to give you a little perspective, the iPhone 7 weighs 0.3 pounds. On this phone, you could make up to one 30-minute phone call, and it would need to charge for 10 hours. In 1993, the 2G market was introduced, and cell phones were more of a hot commodity. The IBM Simon, the personal communicator, is considered the actual first cell phone. The cost of that cell phone was $899 with a 2-year contract. However, it only worked in Bell's 15-state service areas. In 1999, a BlackBerry was all the rage. Consumers were using the QWERTY keyboard to text, surf the internet, and play games. In 2007, there were 295 million 3G users around the world. While that may seem impressive, that number only accounted for about 9% of the total worldwide number of mobile users. In 2008, Apple Products introduces the iPhone 3G, introducing millions of people to apps and touchscreens. Today, the cell phone market is dominated by the 4G and LTE speeds, lightweight designs, and powerful data packages that provide a useful service for consumers daily. So we all know how easy and portable cell phones are. They easily stick in your pocket, or they're in your purse, or they're in the most convenient place for you, usually by your bedside, even at night. You can communicate with anyone. It allows communication between both long-lost family members, contacts for work, students, anything that you might need, you have it right there at the touch of your fingertips. It allows you to make a roadside assistance call for if you are having trouble with your car or you run out of gas or whatever. You now have that quick, instantaneous almost roadside assistance help that can help you get out of an accident. It's enhancing the way that workers can talk to their employers during a day's travel if they're maybe out of town or whatever. They're able to connect with their employers and then able also to give actual real-time information to their employers about meetings with potential clients. So you definitely have in your hand a very quick and easy way to make connections with people. And it also helps with navigation. People aren't using maps anymore, and they're able to quickly make new connections in familiar territories, but then also go into those new and different places. Driven to distraction. I bet you didn't know that in 2010, 33,000 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes, and the number one cause of those deaths were work-related deaths. The National Safety Council estimates that 27% of crashes in 2013 involved drivers using their cell phones. And in 2015, 3,477 people died as a result of distracted driving. And 1.2 million crashes were the result of drivers talking on a cell phone, and over 300,000 crashes were the result of texting and driving. A recent study suggested that a crash is 4 times as likely when a person is using a handheld device or a hands-free device. So that gives you the idea that maybe, when you're doing things that you think, I'm being safe, I'm doing things safe, and I'm using my hands-free device, Not always. It's just as likely that you could have a crash. Simply put, we're just distracted drivers. Doing anything in driving is dangerous. Even hands-free devices, additional no safety benefits. And I want to put something in perspective for you. If when you take your eyes away from the road to read a text message, on average, it takes about 4.6 seconds to read that text message. If you're driving for 4.6 seconds at 55 miles per hour, that is the equivalent of driving the length of a football field blindfolded. Cell phone use and texting while driving laws. On this slide, you'll see that Arkansas is a primary enforcement of texting ban for all drivers. What does that mean? Primary law prohibits texting while driving, with a minimum fine for the first violation and increased fines for subsequent offenses. The law must not provide an exemption to allow texting while stopped in traffic, which means you can't text and drive when you're stopped at a stop sign or at a red light. You could still get a ticket. Arkansas law also prohibits any use of handheld cell phone devices in school zones and highway work zones. Drivers could receive fines of up to $100 and also have their license suspended if they have too many offenses on their record. So you definitely don't want to do that. So what is a distracted driver? There are three main types of distraction. Visual distraction, which is taking your eyes off of the road. Manual distraction, which is taking both hands off of the wheel or one hand off of the wheel at any time. And then cognitive distraction, which is taking your mind off of driving. And a distracted driving technique that you may not even know that you're doing is when you are driving down the road, you're going to answer a text message, and answering that text message, you've visually taken your eyes off of the road. You then manually take one hand off of the wheel, and you're not thinking about what's going on in front of you because you're answering that text message that's in front of you instead of watching the road and watching for other drivers. Other things that can be distracted driving activities are eating and using in-vehicle technology systems like a navigational system. Those are both very real sources of distraction. And while any of these distractions can endanger drivers and others, texting while driving is especially dangerous because it combines all three types of distraction. Texting while driving is prohibited for all drivers, no matter what their age or ability to drive. OSHA suggests that employers should declare their vehicles as text-free zones, and to emphasize the commitment of their commitment to their workers, customers, and communities. By establishing work procedures and rules that don't make it necessary for workers to text while driving in their duties. And also to make clear procedures, times, and places for drivers to use safe judgment and texting and other technologies for communication with managers and customers. They should incorporate this safe communication practice into worker orientations and trainings. And then also eliminate financial and other incentive programs that encourage workers to text while driving. There are some other organizations on this slide that you can see have already implemented this process. In 2009, President Obama issued an executive order prohibiting all federal employees from texting while driving on government business or with government equipment. In 2010, the Federal Railroad Administration banned cell phone and electronic device use of employees on the job. And in October of that same year, the Federal Motor Carrier Administration enacted a ban that prohibits commercial vehicle drivers from texting while driving. And then in 2011, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration banned all handheld cell phone use by commercial drivers and drivers carrying hazardous materials. Health effects. Cancer risk. Cell phones emit radio frequency and non-ionizing radiation. Radio frequency is released through the antenna and travels away from the body at the speed of light. Non-ionizing radiation has not shown any conclusive evidence that it causes cancer in the body. And actually, in radio frequencies, there has not been any conclusive studies in the last 15 years that have shown an increase in carcinogenic effects. What is more likely is that there's an issue with a reduction of sleep, as we are constantly getting on our phones throughout the night, checking our phones, texting, surfing the internet, looking at social media, even into the late night hours. And we are not getting our full 8 hours of rest that is needed for the body to reset and be as productive as possible the next day. Transmittable diseases. Cell phones come in contact with our hands, our mouth, and our faces, and many people use their cell phones as a tool throughout their day, even in the bathroom. This can lead to illness because many transmittable diseases happen from our fingers and get into our body through our eyes, mouth, and nose, such as the common cold and the flu. Social and psychological issues. Cyberbullying and social media shaming can play a big part into someone's self-esteem. And this issue is not only just true in teenagers, where you see it predominantly, but you also see it in adults, because people hide behind their social media and they say mean and hurtful things without actually thinking about how it affects another person. Spine and neck issues. As we are constantly leaned over looking down at our phones, we put strain on our C3 vertebrae, and those are important in the neck and in the back and in the spine. Carpal tunnel syndrome is a common syndrome that affects the index thumb and the index finger and the thumb finger, causing numbness and a tired feeling in those fingers, which also happens to be the fingers that most people text with. Cell phone mitigation techniques. By keeping your messages short, by using word abbreviations and word predictions, you can reduce strain on your neck and spine. You will also potentially reduce stress on your wrists and your thumbs and your fingers by keeping your messages short and to the point. Taking a break. Knowing when to stop. Put your phone on airplane mode or on a quiet mode so that you can take a break from your phone and look around and see this world around you. You can stop overusing your fingers by giving your fingers a gentle stretch, and if you're on a long phone call, switching your hands back and forth quickly from left ear to right ear. You can also hold your phone with one hand and switch back and forth to avoid strain on the wrists and thumbs. Giving your eyes a break. Looking away from your cell phone for at least 20 minutes at 20 feet away will allow you to refocus your eyes and also think about using a larger screen to avoid eye strain. Using alcohol wipes to regularly clean off your phone, clean your screen, and clean your case on your phone will help you to reduce your risk for transmittable diseases. And always be safe. You don't want to walk and drive. You definitely don't want to walk and drive. You don't want to walk while you're on a cell phone and drive when you're on a cell phone. That way you can avoid injuring yourself and others. Okay, so here are some additional resources from OSHA in the DFA, which is the Department of Finance and Administration in Arkansas, and they have some really great tips and tricks for employers and employees trying to implement this kind of program into their own work environment. Okay, so in summary, I've talked about the history of cell phones and when driving, when driving is a distraction, when you think you're being a safe driver and using your hands-free option on your phone, but you're responsible for making choices that can save someone else's life. When you leave today, I want you to think about how important is that phone call or is that text message? Is it worth your life, your children's life, the life of your family, your friends? Is it something that you can wait and do later? And also, I've talked about state laws and OSHA regulations. I've talked about health effects, cancer risks, and mitigation techniques. And I really hope that you've gotten something out of this program. And I really also hope that if you have any questions, you'll stick around and ask me. I'd be happy to answer any of those. Thank you.